Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. After a mixed weekend for OpTic Texas, Dashy is explaining exactly why they seem to start so slow, especially in the Los Angeles Grillers series, saying they were playing around with a few ideas OpTic, and he doesn't necessarily expect that performance against Minnesota and Los Angeles Grillers to continue going into their upcoming games. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, there's some sort of update supposedly coming soon on what's going on at Miami. We know when the event is. We know where the event is. We, however, still don't know what's going on with challenges. There were rumours that they will do one, and from the understanding we presently have, there definitely will be a Miami Challengers Open, but we still don't know where or when. There were rumours initially that there's no way, given the state of the venue and everything else going on at the venue at the same time, that they can do it at the same venue as the actual CDL event. The initial discussion was that it was going to be at another venue, like half an hour away, but 2 weeks later, and then it was going to be like 3 weeks later, something like that anyway. Now, we then heard rumours that actually, no, it's not going to be later, it's going to be on the same weekend at the same venue, but we're organising it. But it's like, for people that are trying to go to this and to play in this, what do you want them to do? We're only a few weeks away from when this event is supposed to be happening, and people have to book flights, they have to book accommodation, so yeah, they really need to get this one resolved ASAP, and I think they promised, or at least they said there'd be some sort of update over this past weekends. That hasn't happened yet, so we are definitely staying tuned for what the next one of that is. I thought this is pretty wild as well here from Optic Maniac. Now, Clay says, easiest vote of my life. So, well, you can guess who he might have voted for here. I feel like Zinni gets hard done by, man. Like, this guy is constantly getting roasted because, I mean, Maniac puts this out, fakest member in Optic. To be fair, Scump actually picks up number 2 here. Maybe people are, like, remembering when he left to Envoy or whatever, and Bose is kind of unanimously last. Scump says, this is an insane poll, but Zinni won this one by a landslide, so yeah, I don't know, I feel kind of bad for Zin for this one. Maniac eventually deletes the tweet. There was also this spotted yesterday here from Fellow. I thought this was hilarious, like Grandma Fellow upholding integrity like no other. But as Fellow says, my grandma just texted me this. Good night. Quick question, what does stair glitched mean? So Fellow replies and explains the situation. It's when you lay down on a staircase, they can see you, but you can't see them. Of course, this happened to Fellow by aBeZy, right, on Seattle Surge, the match they played this past weekend on the Rio Hardpoint. Caused a lot of drama at the time. Maybe not as much drama as it would have done if Surge weren't breaking every GA under the sun so far this season already. They continue to do so. We don't know whether that's really going to result in a blacklist again. I know there's been some debate on whether Surge actually ever were blacklisted or not. I think JP might have said on stream that that wasn't the case. As far as we understand it, that was the case for some time. I mean, I think RCT's said it, that they were blacklisted, but maybe for not as long as we thought they were. It might have been a week, it might have been a few days, I don't know. But maybe the other teams realise, you know what, these guys are so bad, we're not really, you know, they're not gaining much from this interaction. But then again, maybe the top teams would think, well, these guys, Surge, are so terrible that we're not going to scrim them anyway because they're not good practice and they're so far behind the curve. So, like, if they were never blacklisted, it's shambolic they're this bad, to be perfectly honest with you. I thought them being this bad almost made some sense if they actually had been blacklisted from practice. And maybe they think, well, if they can keep getting away with breaking GAs, then why not just run it up and do it again? Because aBeZy did this past weekend. So anyway, Fellow says it's not allowed, but one of the kids we played yesterday used it and still lost, which I thought was a funny way to put it. And as, you know, G Fellow says, thanks, I no idea how to take it. Glad it didn't go well for them at triple exclam, which I thought was a pretty funny way to roll this out. So we'll see if Ravens can keep up this good momentum. Now, look, playing Surge might well be a free dub at this point in the CDL, given the way they look right now. So I'm not going to take too much away from that one, and they did lose the Surge, but all of the 3 respawns were incredibly comfortable. I think that was probably more on Surge being completely atrocious than Ravens being especially good, but we'll see in their matchups, I suppose, next weekend. Insight has also talked about an event in London, or just in the UK in general. You know, Manchester would be nice. I don't know if this is going to be on the agenda, and there is questions about whether the CDL even exists next year in the same format. Adam Adamu, though, from Toronto Ultra, of course, Insight's organisation, has said that given Ultra and, well, Overactive Media, the entities that they own, Mad Lions, other teams, have presence all across across the world, they are looking to do something in Europe at some point in terms of an event. Whether they will execute that for next season, I guess we'll see. But yeah, Insight would look forward to the opportunity. I don't know if it's going to happen until after the CDL ceases to exist, to be perfectly honest, just because, or at least in the current franchise level format, because all the UK teams and even Paris are now gone and it's all based in the States. You guys from the UK know what that is like. But we also got to talk about this. There was an interesting clip that was mentioned here on the Unprocessed episodes when Hitch and Roger were looking back at some of these episodes. And I thought this clip was, well, I think it's pretty much known, but Hitch basically says, it's not, he says it for like 5 seconds, but right at the start of this clip he says that if Priestahh had been signed during World War II, then Scump would have likely stayed around, or almost certainly stayed around. So I think this is kind of a known thing, like the start of Modern Warfare 2, they obviously had a bad performance at the start. They come like top 12, whatever it was, at that Raleigh event. Then Dashy's dropped because they decided to run it back with the team. It obviously wasn't working. They wanted to get Pred in though, right? And they put the money in, and this is what Hex was talking about here, trying to secure Pred services from Seattle Surge, offering a big amount of money to do so. And then we believe that Surge went back and forth and said, well, you know, actually, we're not so happy with that investment money, and then we want more money. And the negotiation was a shambles. Eventually it broke down and Pred stayed. But the belief is that had Pred actually gone to OpTic at the time, which was, you know, probably should have happened. I mean, let's be honest, Surge should have just taken the money for him, given the results that they got. They didn't get results, if you guys aren't aware, for the rest of the season. Then that probably would have made more sense. And if Pred would have been joining the team, then Scump would have probably stayed as like a flex player or something. And I think Scump was also really, really good at Modern Warfare 2 last year. It is a shame, I think, really, that he retired when he did. It makes sense for Scump and for his future, and obviously he's enjoying the content life, and he has said a few times lately that, you know, despite being tempted at times to return to competitive play, and I still think he could definitely do it if he wanted to, he's in the position where it just makes more sense for him not to, and to, you know, stay as a content creator, right? But the option was there, the possibility was there for Scump to return even in the most recent season, but certainly, as was mentioned there, if Pred had come into the team when he did, Scump might still be playing, right? Because who knows, if Pred joins the OpTic guys last year, what results do they get with Scump still around? You know, possibly quite good. Does that mean that Scump's still playing to this day? Possibly. I mean, this game is better than last year's game, I'd probably say. So I guess an interesting little what-if moment there, to be honest. But I wanted to share this clip from Dashy, though, on exactly what happened with OpTic this past weekend, because difficult to say for OpTic this weekend, whether it was really a positive or a negative. The way they won against Rocker was impressive, for sure, but you're only going to win that series in that position, like 1 out of 100 times. Like, I don't know, being down to the way they were in that control, it took a mega troll from Rocker to even lose that map, and then of course OpTic still had to clutch up the sub base and then close out the game 5 anyway. Like, that should have been, and it would have been 99 out of 100 times a 3-0 for the Minnesota Rocker, but it wasn't, and OpTic capitalized on the situation. And then against the Gorillas, I think we were expecting them to just kind of slam them, really, but game 1, they got nearly 100 point clubbed on the Karachi. So there were questions, and I think for good reason, to be fair, on exactly how OpTic 2 days in a row came out really flat in 2 series against teams they should be favoured to beat. So Dashy comments on this and says that he doesn't really see it quite in that way, especially in the Los Angeles Gorilla series, says that actually the Karachi pick was Gorilla's best map, and the way that OpTic went about it was more for their own personal gain than actually to fully lock in.
Real question, is there any reason why you guys start off slow but then tee up? It's actually a good question. To be fair, I mean, LAG, that is their best map, Karachi HP, and I guess we kind of use this series as not necessarily like a map pool series to like try, but we knew we wanted to get a Rio S&D in for sure. And our Karachi HP isn't as good as like our, because we feel like we're good at every HP, and then we were just thinking that to get like a Karachi dub on the board, you know what I mean? And we also looked at it like our Karachi practice has been really good too, so it's like kind of a win-win. Well, we looked at it like it was a win-win. LAG didn't. We also trolled too, in my opinion, that like we were just like trying, because we know the for breakoffs at least, like we know the other side's better, but we wanted to see if we can maybe counter like the other like or counter the breakoff basically from the other side.
This was that Karachi map. If you guys didn't see it this weekend, Diamond.com was frying. Shotzzy got absolutely tucked into bed this game one, of course. And yeah, Gorillas very comfortably took the game one, which was definitely a surprise after the momentum they'd gained off that Rocker series the day before, that Gorillas would just come out and slam them. Now, we don't really know how good LAG are, but they don't look especially good. They've been in some sort of a regression, I would say. At the start of the season, they've got the teamwork, they've got the chemistry. They might not have the most talent. They're going to be all right. But as time progresses, usually these teams start to get slightly weaker. And OpTic, of course, did win the series. You know, they won the Rio Search and Destroy comfortably. They closed out a pretty competitive Karachi control, and then they won the series on the Skid Row. But even the Skid Row, there were chances for Los Angeles Gorillas there. So it's an interesting week for OpTic because difficult to say whether it's too positive or negative. I think if I'm OpTic, I'm trying to look on the more negative ends to realize that they're probably a couple of steps behind where they need to be if they want to actually win the major, which is the plan, of course. But I also think that many of the top teams, certainly FaZe have historically been included in this, and of course even Ultra I would say is the same story in recent times as well, on how they go about their league matches, because FaZe, the last couple of years, they're quite happy to go 3-2 online. That's no big deal for them because they are going to try and learn everything they can, and Cold War was especially, you know, they were so far ahead in Cold War that they would just be prepping map pool. Basically every single series they would play, if it wasn't against a real top team, they would just decide to use that series to expand their map set and play maps they don't usually play, and they'd still usually win. They wouldn't always, but they would still usually. So I think Toronto is kind of feeling in the same way, and of course OpTic, as Dashy says, is in a similar boat in some respects, but I think, you know what, let's play Karachi hardpoint because we want to get some practice in a match play that they've been looking a little bit better at behind the scenes in practice apparently. So they thought, all right, let's chal up, let's square up Karachi on Los Angeles Gorillas, like that's their favorite hardpoint map, and also let's deliberately start and choose the bad side so we can get practice on that. So, you know, definitely some map pool expansion going on there from OpTic, and sure, it backfired in the sense they got slammed 251-22, and they'll probably think, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing that one again, but Dashy's feeling is that the slow start wasn't just like a trend, let's say, or a trait of this new OpTic team, but it was simply because they chose to effectively like start slow, really, by the way that they structured the map set. And I get it in the sense that OpTic this stage do not have the hardest run of games. They have one of the easier qualifier runs you're really going to get. Their 4 games remaining are as follows. So they play Ravens, is their next game next weekend. Then they play Boston. So theoretically, right, given the teams they've beaten so far, you know, they'd be favored against Ravens and Boston. Then, however, it gets pretty serious, right? And I think this is when their next week, obviously they play only Ravens. The weekend after that, they play Boston and Ultra. And then they only play the Subliners on the final weekend. So I think they have to show some degree of improvement, or at least win these series against especially Ravens more comfortably and see what happens against Boston, because, you know, Toronto is going to be a real test for any team in the league, and that's going to be a real interesting indication, the Ultra series and then of course the Subliner series, as to where OpTic are looking going into the major, whether they're serious championship contenders. But even despite these results in the hardpoint, OpTic are still quite comfortably the second strongest hardpoint team in the game. The strongest by a margin, of course, is Toronto Ultra, who have an average differential of 64, which is absurd. Like, on average, they win a hardpoint map 250 to, 186, which is like... that is pretty ridiculous over like an average of 21 hardpoint maps they've played. OpTic on average win by 20 points, but they're 17-8 so far this season, so a near 70% win rate. FaZe are then third. Boston are actually fourth because there's loads of teams that are pretty even. And of course, well, the less said about Los Angeles Thieves records, probably the better. But to be honest, despite the fact they've only won 2, their differential is honestly not too dissimilar to Surge's. And I wouldn't be too surprised if these numbers swap around quite considerably over the coming days. But still, Ultra 19-2 is ridiculous. But still, I think Ultra in a similar boat where I think they'll probably try and expand their map pool as well. We know that Ultra are not the strongest at Rio in general. Their search and destroy on the map has been somewhat suspect. So is their hardpoint, to be fair, as well. But I think if you're Ultra, you know that Rio is the map where other teams can possibly get at you in a series right now. So if I'm Ultra, I'm not vetoing the map. I'm trying to play it. I'm trying to get better at it. So we might see similar things here where Ultra decide, in the same way that OpTic are squaring up with teams on their best hardpoint maps, Ultra might do the same to try and learn Rio, because, you know, all of these teams will be confident. They're making the winners bracket anyway. So, you know, wins or loss at these points, obviously matter to some degree, but when you've got this many CDL points, you're qualified for the World Championship anyway. What matters most is improving and learning more, as opposed to necessarily getting 10 points on the board every single week. So very much interested in your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.